Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Please.
Well, you have a pretty steady job.
Meet the money.
So, good morning, folks. This is the agriculture committee meeting Thursday morning, February 22nd. And this morning, we're going to be taking up S301, which is miscellaneous ag bill. Plus, I think we have an add-on that we'll talk about as well. We'll introduce ourselves and then get started.
Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District.
Irene Renner, Chittenden North, which includes Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County.
And Senator Westman is on the committee, conference committee of the budget bill, so he's in that meeting. He'll miss and I'm Bobby Sharp for Leeds County. So welcome, and I don't know, Stephen, did you want to lead off or you want?
I think Senator Cassie has more substantive things to talk about, so it might be better to lead with her.
Yeah, your thing is right at the top of our bills, so that will work out fine. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you. For the record, Patrick Polinas, CEO of VITA. I'd also like to, if it's all right with you, Senator, have Sarah Isham here with me.
Well, I'll have to think, no, glad to have you. Yeah.
Sarah is the Director of Agricultural Lending with VITA. Thank you. So we were here a bit ago and we introduced several enhancements to the existing VAC statute that in summary expands the eligibility criteria in certain key areas and also clarify some things. And in reviewing the draft of S301, we found that there were a couple of items that didn't make it into the draft. And so I wanted the opportunity to come back and sort of go through those items and understand if it was intentional, then fine, we can talk about that, or if it was just an oversight in the drafting process. So we'll make this fairly brief because I don't want to spend time reviewing everything that we've already reviewed, but honestly, just stop us if there's questions on anything that I'm kind of moving quickly through, okay? So what you have in front of you is our language that we submitted, and the items that are highlighted are the ones that did not make it into S301. So in section 374A, there's a clarifying statement there as far as what the sort of intent of the agricultural credit program is, to add that granting of the loan will serve as a substantial inducement for the establishment or expansion of an eligible project within the state. That's just clarifying language to say that it doesn't have to be an existing farm, that we can finance new farms that are starting up. Somebody could infer that that's already eligible, but the way the language is currently, it's a little ambiguous. So that's just clarifying language. The other item that's highlighted here in this section is just to add in forestry. Forestry was a sector that was new or added to the VAC statute some time ago, several years ago. And so it's kind of scattered in certain places throughout the statute, but it really, just want to put it here to make it very clear, forestry is part of the eligible sectors that that can run to.
And where Where is that at? If go over on page
Well, on the first page there, that's,
and two.
it's under 374A1.
Skipping ahead to, page 18, or I don't know if it's 18 on your version, but there's more. You have 4. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that. Added for amendment, forest products means an enterprise that is engaged in manufacturing, harvesting, trucking, processing, manufacturing, crafting, or distributing forest products at least partially derived from Vermont forests. Again, clarifying that forestry is indeed part of what we can led to.
Yeah, it
So
also
it
recognized.
Could be somebody that works all stuff out of Hampshire or New York. But,
Yes. Yes,
Right, right. So the at least partially is a key change.
yes. And from what we've heard in the foresting industry, it's getting more confined, a lot of people have gone out of business, so they
Yes.
have to work further away
Right.
and.
Yeah.
Economics.
Yeah. Yeah, forestry sector is something that we're in conversations.
yes.
The agency on to try and help.
Yeah.
So anything we can do
Yeah.
in that sector is positive.
It really recognizes too, like for both agriculture and forestry, we really are part of a regional economy. And so a lot of businesses within Vermont rely on, products and all that come from outside the state.
Sure. Yeah. I think Rygate paper, generating plant, they get out of state wood, and sometimes they're Vermonters over there doing the logging.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they crisscross the border.
Okay, so moving on to 374H, which is loan eligibility standards. One of the key items that we highlighted in our previous visit here was to change the eligibility standards right now, which say a business entity, the majority ownership of which is vested in one or more farmers, to reduce that to a minimum of 20% one or more farmers. We have run into situations where you have a farmer, owner, operator who's here in Vermont working the lands, but they're not the majority owner. And we, right now, can't help that situation.
Yeah, they're almost like something tenant.
Somewhat.
They're almost like the old tenant farmers that we had years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, there's an investment, so
Mhm.
fire each other.
yeah. But the point being is that the farm is here in Vermont.
Yeah.
It's a working lands enterprise and jobs here in Vermont. It's, additive to the Vermont economy. And so the fact that it's not owned 100% or majority of that farmer who's on the farm can limit our ability to help that particular enterprise.
You
So-
run,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask, do you run into that very often? Yeah.
We probably run into that a couple of times a year anyway.
So it's
Yeah.
not,
So we do run into it and we actually kind of weed out those inquiries pretty quickly because the way the statute is written for majority ownership of farmers is a short conversation, but we feel like there have been some more very worthwhile projects that we haven't been able to fund for that.
yeah. And, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. So I'm kind of curious, Cassie, in case a question was to come up. How did you arrive at 20%? Why not 25, 50?
Yeah. There isn't magic in that 20%. It is somewhat, industry practice, say in commercial lending, where 20% is considered, material enough ownership. So anyone who owns 20% of a business is considered to have enough of a vested interest, and we would require that 20% or greater owner to personally guarantee the loan. If it's less than 20%, it's generally considered not, a significant enough amount, and that's kind of industry practice.
Okay, so other lending institutions have that as a threshold for the most part too?
Yes, yeah, so, I mean, you could use the SBA as an example, that's what the Small Business Administration considers, significant enough.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if this were put into law, would you be contacting some of those folks, or don't you track who you've rejected over time? Because I would think it would be really important. If I applied last year, I got rejected to know that this change happened, but if I'm a busy farmer, I'm not paying attention to some of these statutes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
We might be able to identify some of them over the last year or two, but beyond that, hopefully.
And hopefully they found financing somewhere to make their project work. It might have been more expensive or more restrictive, but, that's a great point, though. The outreach is important, and, when we changed our statute on the commercial side a few years ago, we made significant outreach to let
Yeah.
businesses know, hey, this has changed, let's talk about it, see if it helps you. The other change here is to add explicitly that nonprofit corporations are eligible. It might be implied in some of the wording above, but again, we've run into situations where we've had to say no to nonprofits because it's not explicit in the language.
And would that be somebody like NOFA, or what would be a nonprofit that might possibly?
We had a horse farm recently that does, it's like a recuperation for horses. Yeah,
It's Orson.
right.
Yeah.
We weren't able to do
Which
it,
is a nonprofit.
right, they're nonprofit. We did do it on the other side of our house, which is the commercial side, but so it's good we have some flexibility, but when we use our commercial tools, there are other limitations as far as how much we can lend on a project. It was fortunate in that case it did fit. We can do more on the agricultural side.
The Intervale might be an example of that.
Yeah, and there's, the classic examples of larger sort of nonprofit working educational facilities.
Yeah. Any questions on that?
I do want to just point out, since we're on this page, we recommended, and it is in the draft, to strike or eliminate the requirement that they be, that it's a resident of this state. So that's great, because you need to be a resident of this state. However, I'm not sure that as drafted, it captures that the project be located in Vermont. That's the intent. So I would just make sure that Ledge Council understands, we're not looking to do projects outside of Vermont. But the residency requirement is helpful to not have that be a restriction.
It does capture it in the state on the first page.
That's, yeah, so I just want to make clear, again, if that is sufficient, Because that talks about, I looked at that wording, where is that, Sarah?
Our wording's right here. Then here it talks about to be used in.
Okay. So if that's clear enough, then I'm fine, but I just wanted to make sure.
Where is that?
Mhm.
I'm not finding, you know, like, where,
Back to 374A.
Yeah.
So the intent of, this is to, you don't have to be a resident, the project has to be in.
Right, we want to be very clear about that.
well, I.
Yeah, I'm not finding that.
It's right at the end of the red.
Oh, okay.
It may be helpful to have it in this loan eligibility
I think it is helpful.
standards section.
Yeah. Sure. Because there's an or there, I'm
Yeah.
thinking that's kind of throwaway, like, I want to do find the both parts of that sentence, so I think it is important to have it, the
Yeah.
back part, so maybe take away the resident part of that A. The end, but even the will help expand agricultural economy. I don't know if that's something we repealed or somebody else repealed, but.
Oh.
Like to, I would take out the resident part, but leave the rest of the red line. Just to reinforce that or clause isn't just about within the state for the second half.
Right, I think that's how I read it too, if it's or,
Like
I was reading, well, it could be a new farm, as I explained at the beginning. But I think if we add that, some clarifying language about where the location of the project in the loan eligibility standards section. Then it would be clear.
So is that okay? And under one, underneath loan eligibility, if we just took out resident, but we left the rest?
A project of this state or in this state and will help expand the agile, yeah, I think that works.
I think so too.
So you got that, Irene?
Senator Renner.
Yeah, it's weird the way it says provide the applicant is. Cause we're not talking about the applicant.
Right, that's
You know. Maybe the applicant is helping to expand, if we just, can we do that? And then now we're not consistent with our. Grammar.
So loan and a fund or.
That might be open to kind of interpretation, how you define helping. I think to Cassie's point, you just say it. The project has to be based in Vermont,
Yeah,
even if you have to add a subsection.
so maybe it's before that, provided the applicant is, because that
Okay.
speaks to the applicant, all those things
That's fine.
before.
Yeah,
But add it above that section.
Well, really, didn't we talk about the project being based in Vermont?
yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm
Project
saying
being based in Vermont.
project is based or located in Vermont.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that. Maybe located is better.
Yeah.
Because a project could be.
Could be an out-of-state corporation or.
Yeah, base doesn't mean that everything's ever. I don't know, I think located is. For wordsmithing here, we're not.
Do you want to connect it to paying taxes in Vermont, or I mean, I don't know if there's a more specific way, legal way to.
Yeah.
Just the local.
I don't, so we talked about examples where there may be a farmer that is based in New York, but wants to buy or has land in Vermont, wants to expand that or invest in that Vermont location. we want to be able to help that Vermont location.
Sure, I see.
So provided the applicant's project is located in.
That would work. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the
The applicant's project is located in Vermont.
Well,
The applicant, yeah,
the whole idea was expanding the economy of our state, no matter where you're located, right? So I think we're losing a sense of that, we take this.
If you take what might help.
The one that was crossed out, says repealed, I might as well, whether low eligible.
you know what if we took out the word applicant above? And went with what you're suggesting. Project is located, and then add the applicant to the below.
Well, the rest of them want the applicant, that's
Right.
hard. Maybe before we talk about low eligibility, maybe there's a prior sentence. The loan must help expand the agricultural higher state.
Yeah. That's actually great.
Want to read it again?
Add a first sentence underneath, the title there on line 6.
Yeah.
So maybe the new line 7 would say something like, the loan must help to expand the agricultural economy of the state, which is basically the wording we're cutting out on line 1 as well. So we're capturing it, we're not getting caught up in the applicant language.
More project based.
We're gonna have to pass this on to Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My only
That's
question
what my job is as a clerk, you know.
is, again, how does one know that it is
Well,
expanding the agricultural economy? Someone could
that's
say,
good.
well, that didn't work.
But isn't that part of the application?
Yeah,
They would have to,
Yeah.
You determine.
yeah.
Okay.
that could be a question on the application. I don't know how you do that, right? Or do you work the,
Well, if it's generating
make a
business.
case, right? They
Yeah.
would have to make a case that it helps expand.
We good?
I think so.
So what Michael says.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
See, Tom?
he's come.
He's coming from 10:15 to 10:30, very small chunk of time.
That's not for us to-
That's really low, my
Thank
God.
you.
So,
All right, so you're gonna take care of that or?
I'll be there with
you want me
that,
to
with
take-
Michael, and then the rest of these changes I'm fine with, I don't know about everybody else.
so we're good.
On that piece.
And maybe, we could have Michael send you a copy.
That would
And
be
you
helpful, yeah.
read it.
Yeah.
And, because we'd like to get it. As we can.
Yeah, thanks for those changes.
Will be very helpful.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
That was our agenda.
Oh,
Do
great.
you have anything else for us?
Well, how are the ag loans doing? Are they running good or shaky or?
No, they're doing pretty well. I mean, there's been a substantial amount of federal dollars that have come in to help some of the farmers, making loan payments. That has helped quite a bit. And we talked last time about the trends in dairy, and that's ongoing. Our portfolio is doing pretty well.
Pretty
though.
strong, and we've had a really good start to this fiscal year.
And we are seeing a greater diversity of applications, for the most part smaller, but you would expect that if it's a vegetable grower or a small berry enterprise or something of that nature, but that's encouraging. That there is still a desire and a passion to do that. And I think that these kinds of changes will further that as we, as more dairies perhaps go out of business and land is conserved, how do you keep that as a working land enterprise? How do you make that be part of the economy? And so that's really what we'd love to help.
Yeah, we had a report a week or so ago that, New England uses all kinds of food. And we're up around to 16%, but we're trying to work to like 30%. And so I would hope that, in the next few years that we pick up quite a few more of these small producers of other, ag products that we can send to southern New England. Do you do much in the meat slaughterhouse business? Do you do loans for those?
They are eligible, yes.
Yeah.
A lot is a relative term. I wouldn't say a lot. We have a couple, few, probably.
Yeah.
Well,
I work-
we've got too many, but we've got a few big ones and, we do hear from beef producers that, the market is pretty good for beef.
Very good.
But you have to be able to process it.
Yeah.
And move it to the consumer, so.
Yeah.
We haven't had Sarah in, I don't think, this year.
No, not this year.
So, sort of report on, how the ag loans are going and, the percentages of defaults or.
The quality of the portfolio, we
Yeah.
can do that. If you wanna put us on your calendar and have time.
Well, maybe, after crossover, we'll have a motion.
Yeah.
Anytime. So, another 3 weeks or so.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'd love to do that.
yeah, well, very good. Any questions from?
I just have a real strange question maybe, but it's probably directed at Steve, or maybe he can answer, maybe he can't. I noticed on line 4 on page 4, just a change from shall mean to means. Is that just a conventional sort of update? Is there a distinction between something shall mean and something means?
Is that in the definition section?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's just a convention that's changing. My understanding is legislative council, and this is maybe not right, but they don't think you need to say shall mean in a definition, which I think is accurate, because if you're defining the term, that's what it means.
okay,
Shall is usually more designed to do what you have to act, what the actions you have to take rather than what words mean. So I don't think there's any difference in saying shall mean or means. I think they just think it's better to say means, because
yes, okay,
yeah,
again,
yeah, but shall is an incredibly important word. It just,
Oh, yeah.
just depends on where it's placed.
very true.
Yeah.
Well, if there isn't anything else, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll,
Good to see you.
We'll get you a copy of the corrected.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that would be super. Thank you.
And then, it'll probably. You might get this out next week,
Okay.
so, if you have an issue with it, get hold of Linda
Okay.
and we'll get you back in.
Great. Great, well, thank you for your ear today.
Sure.
Would you like these? Here, come on over. You take those and there's some
Yeah,
white
sure.
paper over there.
You can sit right next to me.
Right. That's right. Then if you have some white copy paper.
Education review.
She doesn't have a desk.
Is it right there?
Yeah, you can sit right here.
Take care.
Thanks, good to see you.
Thanks, Kev.
Fine.
Thank you.
See you, bye.
Sure, you sleep
So,
sit in the
Stephen-
chair, the big chair. So she has a
Yeah.
place probably need.
No,
She's scared.
See, nobody.
I know the feeling.
Kids do it. Kids do it.
Right.
So did you have any, comments on, changes that we just made or?
Good morning, Senator. I'm just for the record, Steve Collier from the Agency of Agriculture. I didn't have the language that Cassie was reading to you, so I wasn't really following along.
Yeah.
I have the original language, and I haven't really focused on it, but it sounds like we had talked to Cassie about this proposal earlier and are supportive. It seems like they have more resources available to help farms.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. So why not make those available? If they didn't have enough resources, then maybe it wouldn't make as much sense, but if they do, then it seems to. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like things were going okay with it.
Yeah, I think they're, they do important work and I think they've got a little smaller book than they used to have and would like to expand it to their maximum potential. So that's good that they're forward thinking and they're less worried about where somebody lives and where something is happening. In Vermont, which makes sense.
We do have borders on 3 sides of us where there's a lot of movement back and forth.
Yeah, we hope so.
Not even on the fourth one.
Yeah.
Right.
So as far as the other proposals, so we talked about it before, and all of the changes that are in the current version we're comfortable with. I don't know if you had any questions. There was one bit when we were talking about the milk handler fee where there's a cap for those who transport milk at $750, but there wasn't a cap for farmers, for producers who also transport their own milk. So we provided some language, which is in the current version, it's on page 5. And, page 5, line 15, but we didn't put in a fee because we weren't.
So you put out of this.
I have copies if you want.
Okay.
Oh, that would be great.
The one that I saw that was published, I think, on February 13th. In your committee, Linda, I think that's the latest one. I know it has the changes that we discussed last time, so yeah.
What page is that?
It's page 5.
One more copy.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. It's page 5, line 15.
Okay.
So the idea was, I think this was Senator Starr's idea was to since transporters are capped, why not the producers who have their own trucks and are transporting their own milk? Why not cap that fee as well? So we just proposed language, but not a specific fee. So that's blank right now, it just says shall be capped at blank per year. So we weren't sure what you were thinking about. The lowest fee right now is $60 if you transport 500 pounds of a day or less. Could be that. Could be lower, could be nothing, could be whatever you want to. There aren't many farmers who do this. There are some.
That ship their own.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's one on my way that, I just didn't think it was fair for a guy that ships one farm's milk or 2 at $750 and somebody else has got 25 trucks, paying $750, right?
That's the most, right? Right.
So what's the least?
Well, currently the minimum annual renewal fee for any milk handler is $60.
And for milk handler?
Yeah.
And what's that cap out of?
The biggest is 1,500.
Pounds?
No, sorry. 500 pounds or less is the minimum, is the $60 fee. The maximum fee for any milk handler is 1,500, and that's if you're over 500,000 pounds. So the range is between 60 and 1,500 for all types of milk handlers per year. So, you know, our position is there's only a handful of farms, as I understand it, who actually do this. Producers are licensed by us for producing milk. We think it's important to have a license if they're going to be transporting their own milk, because we want to make
We
sure.
gotta know who's doing.
Right, we need to be able to trace the milk and make sure that it's being done correctly. I don't think we really care what the fee is, for these handful of farms that do it, so if you could make it $25, you could make it $60, which is the current minimum. You could make
Well,
it
I
not,
don't think it should be free,
I'd say as low as possible. They're having trouble making it sweet as it is, right?
yeah.
Unless we slap them with fees.
and they have a lot, you know, they do have a license with us for producing milk. Like I said, we want the license, but the fee is not really the big concern for this handful of farms that do it themselves.
So if we put it, say at 75 or 100, they pay now how much?
Well, it would depend, the fee that they're supposed to pay would depend on how much they're transporting, but it would be capped at $7.50, but it could be anywhere between that. Although, yeah,
Should it match the 60 just for sanity's sake or no? Is there no real timing?
I'm not sure how long ago these fees were constructed or exactly what they're based on, but
See, a producer pays how much?
for their producer fee, I don't really remember. For the license to produce, I don't remember. It might have that here.
Because we could set it for some side.
Yeah.
And then,
Depending on what it is.
We really, we're not anxious to charge this fee to people who already have the license and they have the small number who are doing it, so. Do want them to have a license, but if you wanted to set a small fee, $25, $60, we don't, it's not
It's not a money maker, you're not looking.
it's not it's really just about making sure that we know the milk's being appropriately handled, and they're already licensed with us, so it's not like people coming in from the dark and
set it,
Yeah,
25.
who's got 10?
Sugar Campbell.
well, at least, now they have to like be licensed.
You even fill your gas tank.
No,
Not anymore.
I mean, I think the PMO is about 800 pages, so there's a lot of things they have to do to be licensed with us, and they handle all the appropriately. So do you want 25 is
I like that. It's,
You okay with that, Mr. Chair?
well, I was gonna say, these little guys have quite a lot of money.
But-
So that,
No problem with that, is that right?
you know. So roughly 25.
And that was all the other language
Don't
change.
you spend it all in one.
Well, it'd be hard to. To spend only that. Not sure I can get much more than a burrito for that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to drink water for that.
So all the other proposals, I think we discussed last time, and I thought everyone was okay with them, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
The other issue that we've run into is, animals running at large. And that, nobody wants to deal with the issue. But it's nightmare for if you're a victim having that happen to you. And we may have to tack something onto one of these miscellaneous bills that would, protect, you know, the neighbors from this, or put a heavy enough penalty on to somebody that's allowing that to happen, so that they'll build their benefits. I mean, I figured out,
Well, those statutes are antiquated, yeah, they just haven't, they're there and they do give enforcement authority, the fees are very small. The reality is that, in my view, right now, that to recover, someone has to sue their neighbor essentially. Is the mechanism that you can actually get the
well, and
damage.
then you go to a lawyer and they say, yeah, we can do that, drop me off the check for 1,500 and we'll get started.
Right, yeah.
And the neighbor doesn't got $15.
Right.
And I mean, we don't want to add another penalty on to the neighbor
Right.
because the farmer, or it isn't even a farmer, it's, you know, a person, doesn't, well, they're like hobby.
Right.
And you don't go fix it or fence yeah. Do you think that I should have a lot of those statutes that deal with that, or is it a
It's
mixed match?
It's for, so we regulate what's on the farm, but traditionally running animals running at large, I think is how it's characterized in the statute, is a public safety issue. So it's something that municipalities have really, it's been a police power, so the municipalities are ones that have that authority to enforce it. And there are current statutes that do it, it's just that the fees are something like, I forgot, $10.
Yeah, they're tiny.
Yeah, they're small, and probably at the time they weren't small, but right now they are.
Next question. You know the situation, were you in the room when we talked about the guy who's, I mean, it's like been for years that these
Cows.
cows are
Petersburg, right?
and for some reason, he can't make a dent with, I think, the police or anyone. I don't know.
I wasn't in the room.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't know.
aware of that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of thing that if we could just help, I mean, this. Ever.
It's,
And partly it sounds like it's, the two of them don't have a great relationship, but it doesn't seem like the authorities have much power to do anything.
Or desire.
Yeah, because it's gonna be for the select board.
And one of the select board members is a neighbor too,
Right.
so.
Yeah, it is a messy situation.
and the only thing I can say about that is that I think it's always important to know the facts. It's not always clear to know exactly what those facts are. But you've got to have a select board or a town that's willing to
Yeah.
figure that out and deal with it. We often get complaints and we'll talk to towns. We try to talk to farmers and say, look, you gotta do this, not just for your neighbors,
Right.
but for your own welfare. If you get a cow out and it gets on the road and someone runs into it and dies, I mean, you may lose your farm. You've got to, this is an obligation to, and there's no perfect way to contain animals, but you've got to do your best.
I remember we were gonna reach out. We're gonna reach out to Ted Brady and ask him. He was.
Was he in from the league? Okay.
That's right, he was gonna come back to us with something.
That makes sense, that because
Yeah.
I mean, the towns, they're never going to, it's easy to have laws and it's easy to enforce laws for people who are willing to comply. When you get somebody who really doesn't care, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
And you can sue them and you can win a judgment and you still may not be able to enforce it, so. I mean, the whole situation, down in Paulette, where the whole zoning issue, it's sort of, that's a classic example of, if someone doesn't care what the laws are, they're pretty difficult to effectively enforce.
The range.
Yeah, which is why we work so hard to get, and farmers, and we think it almost always works well to get buy-in. you gotta, if the people don't care about the laws and they'll say the right things when you're there, but then the rest of the time they'll do what they want. So it's really hard to cultivate that.
Yeah.
But people with animals ought to be controlling that because they can cause a lot of damage. But on the other hand, sometimes they get out.
Of course, the added problem here is that even if we were to increase the penalty, to thousands of dollars, and so then the person couldn't afford it, didn't pay it, and the municipality comes in, but then they're stuck with the animals. What do they do with the animals if they take them? Because that adds an expense to the town that, well, they may not want to take the animal. It was. it's a
Or,
real
or
tough
if
spot.
it happens to somebody once
Yeah,
and they get $1,000 fine
Yeah.
and it was just an accident, a complete accident, and they're a really decent person. Next thing you know, they've got $1,000 fine. But that situation is so bad out there, but
Well,
I would see what Kenneth Brady
on
says.
Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does it make sense to increase the fines anyway? Since they are so outdated, would that make sense to throw those in this bill just to say, look, the fines are increased?
Well, that
Other
puts-
people have to do their job, but at least it's not a $10 fine the first time it gets out and a $25 fine the next time they get out because
I
that's
think I know what's the
unrealistic.
answer. That's all right. That's a policy question.
Well, yes, we haven't talked about it in the agency, but from, just my personal opinion, at some point, a fine becomes completely ineffectual if it's not meaningful. I mean, if you've got a $10 fine, today's world is not meaningful.
So I guess my question is,
It's not.
the rest of the board, is that
Yeah.
something that we should be doing, if nothing else? Since we have this bill that we can put that in.
Well, the agency must look at you look at fines sort of like every 10 years or something. Is there a review of them or?
Well, we have
Sort of like as this kind of stuff pops up.
We have asked for greater leverage in our fines recently, actually, which this committee did. Because we still have some different fines, but we had very different fines depending on if it's water quality or other
Yeah.
things. So we do, and the hardest part about fines is how to levy them consistently. So it's one thing to say you can levy up to $5,000 per offense and $50,000 overall. But then if you don't do it consistently, you're not meeting this government standard. You gotta do things fairly and you can't do them arbitrarily. So it's pretty hard sometimes. So we try to go with education and agreement first, but at some point, if people don't listen, you've gotta ratchet it up.
Thanks for sharing. Has the agency gotten involved in this situation? Because in a way, I feel like if the agency went out and just said, hey, this is the situation. Really hope that you can, I don't know, maybe it's so bad they wouldn't even listen, but
We have been,
you have been involved.
and to no avail. And
Really?
we've had, not me personally, but I know of our.
I'd like you to go personally.
Now you're just saying you don't like me. No one else can deal with it, so send him.
Okay,
But we've had a lot of conversations and that's why I say that getting to the facts is not super clear.
okay.
Which I don't know what they are. If I did, it would be easier. I just know that there are very starkly contrasting claims.
well, I think we ought to do something to get it under control before something more serious occurs there.
Yeah,
Because you only put up with stuff like that so long, and 10 years is long enough.
yeah.
I mean, it's a lot longer than I would have done with it, but
Well, if I was a town and part of my job was to promote public safety and protect public safety, and there was a citizen who was complaining and I wanted to try to enforce it, I want the authority to do something meaningful. Because otherwise you're just spending a lot of time without any prospect. Yes. That's,
there isn't any, such law that would ban somebody from owning animals.
I think that would have to be a court decision. There isn't a law, that, you know, interesting, the laws that are on the books, if I remember correctly, they have because I think everyone used to have animals, so I think animals were out a lot more. And people were also more sympathetic, and people had a barn, so one of the things in the existing laws is if somebody, an animal trespassed on your land, you could take it and keep it.
Hmm.
And if the person didn't pay you for the damage, you could sell it. So I think that's built right into the, this.
I think you're right.
Sort of the self-help, you know, okay, your cow's gonna keep eating my corn, well, I'm gonna, now you don't have a cow.
None of my neighbors have a barn.
Right, right. It doesn't work so well now, but at one time it was probably pretty good.
Boy, I'm stumped to come up with a solution.
Well, we're the last resort.
Well, I want some higher fines, just to show that we recognize that they're too low. And that if a select board or anybody else did wanna act, those fines would be considerable. And worth going to court over maybe, right? I mean, I don't think people should be spending thousands of dollars for the court to recoup a.
No, and I think
$25 fine.
ultimately a court can award damages, you know, property
That's
damages for whatever trespasses caused. And a court could issue an injunction saying if your animals get out again, then we're going to seize and sell the animal. I mean, that's the kind of thing a court can do, but
They've
it's,
been there once and,
Right. Like,
I think they was $5,000 damages.
you know,
That I didn't pay.
yeah, that's, then you talk about seizing assets and what you can seize, and what you can't seize.
I mean, it just goes on and on
Yeah,
and on and, yeah, I don't know, I guess you just can't. There's not enough you can do to a bad neighbor. An animal or something.
we don't always do great with the people who are shooting on people, so there's there's a lot of challenges to enforcing the laws for those who don't want to be compliant. But that doesn't mean you don't build the laws that are at least give you a chance.
Yeah. Maybe, maybe if you have an opportunity, you could pull some of your fund structures up and you can take a look at those and deal with, once we see them, deal with
Sure.
with those, and maybe that will bring us to, thinking about that, will bring other ideas to the table.
Yeah, our fines are simple. I'm happy to explain those, but I do think it's great to start with the league just because I'm not sure what it probably would be useful if it was somewhat consistent with what they do now. And it's maybe all over the map or maybe rather uniform, but I think it'd be helpful to know what they think is enough and not too much.
Yeah. Anything else?
So I'm coming in to talk about the PFAS bill tomorrow. I don't know if there's anything that any of the committee members think it would be helpful for us to focus on, or if you want to just wait till tomorrow, or.
Well, it would be good, I think, if we had some language. And Michael's gonna come at 10:50.
Yes.
Can you hang around until
Think so, yeah,
10:15 and
yeah,
he can only be with us a few minutes.
Right. right,
And we could discuss the idea that, see, we've got to present some language to health and welfare. And because we don't have control of the bill, but
right.
we've got to have some meaningful language to give them.
Do you have any idea if they definitely want to ban, so I'm talking about the pesticide pieces of it. But if they definitely want to ban PFAS in pesticides, or if they might be willing to go separately.
I think
under other-
that was left to us.
Okay,
And there's some that we could get rid of.
you know,
Possibly, but there's some in medicines that the veterinarians were in day before yesterday or yesterday. Day before yesterday.
Tuesday.
And, you know, they said it would be not very good to, ban the medicines that might have a little bit in here. From, we're gonna have more testimony tomorrow about as far as corn goes, it's really iffy if there's even any PFAS in treated seeds. Of course, upstairs, they're going to ban treated seeds and we're really talking about it. And, you know, we'll probably have a couple of years of summer studies on that. And, you know, get tested and then eat some of the corn, get tested again. So, yeah, but we're gonna have to deal with that stuff and,
We couldn't have anything around like the ear tags and then.
Yeah, I'll be up to speed.
yeah, that quality you wear is, that's.
I'm sure.
He doesn't have any ear
I,
tags. What do you got?
I want some ear tags.
Well, we can, we'll snap you right in.
It only hurts when it goes in.
I was just wondering though, with ear tags and stuff. There's so many on the market, I don't know which ones have, if some don't have PFAS and some do. Is there a way that we could get the agency to weigh in on this
Yes.
regulatory?
yeah, I mean, there are about 16,000 different PFAS compounds and they're in clothing and cars and medicine, human medicine, veterinary medicine. They're in basically everything. And they've been in, they're also fallen rain. So, and they've been found in the Arctic Circle and or Antarctica, I can't remember which. Oh, everywhere. Yeah.
But the question for us is if we did in veterinary medicine, would we can create some exemptions for them and, and they mentioned ear tags, for examples. And then they mentioned dog collars that for the flea collars for,
Yeah.
for the flea and tick. Because they were most worried about ticks going out in Lyme disease coming in and that, but, I've used lots of, the ear tags for insecticide because once you let your cattle out in the spring, if you don't have some sort of thing to fight the flies, you're going to get pink eye in your cattle, and which is not, and if you get pink eye and it gets bad enough, then you're in the spot that the only way you can get rid of it is antibiotics, and we don't want to use antibiotics, But when I just go online with my phone, I can come up with like 30 or 40 different types of ear tags just at Tractor Supply.
Right.
I don't know. Is there any difference in them? Do they all have PFAS? Do they all have the same level of PFAS?
I don't think anyone knows is the reality. We do know they're in medicine. We know they're in a lot of things, but that's part of what I think Maine and Minnesota, part of the problem that they're having is they're being asked to develop this registry. And you've got companies, so maybe big companies can figure out their supply chain that's 300 components long. And a small company trying to figure out everything that they sell, they don't know. And so what's frustrating for us about this whole conversation is no one's talking about stopping making the most toxic chemicals. Just keep making them, but then we're supposed to regulate them to the back end. If they're bad for us, maybe we shouldn't make them. It's just a thought.
I'd love to do that. If I was in California, probably, if we did, they might listen to us. If I do it in Vermont, I'm probably
Well, that's
You got less chance of being listened to.
Well, that's why from our perspective, it's a federal issue, but there are some known sources that we can man, like one of the biggest contributors that we're aware of, PFAS, is from biosolids, which is from us. It's from our own waste. That's why biosolids have PFAS in it. You can decide where you put those, and that's something we can do in the state. But to try to regulate the interstate and international economy, one chemical at a time, I don't know how that's possible.
It's not gonna add up very well.
I'd just say on that, a total ban of ear tags in cattle. It would be terrible for any beef cattle or dairy, it would be terrible.
Well, as I understand it, and this may not be exactly right, but I had a quick conversation with our veterinarians yesterday, because Michael O'Grady asked us a question about this, and they're very concerned about the medicines, and there's apparently 6 anesthesias that are regularly used by veterinarians, which is important whenever you're doing a lot of procedures, and 5 out of 6 of those have PFAS.
Oh, jeez.
And the other one, I think nobody uses. So
So we could ban that.
we ban that, and we can't care for animals anymore. I mean, that's and the confusing thing is PFAS, as I understand.
He wanted to ban the one that nobody uses.
I got it. Send a note down to Jimmy to ban that.
Can't say we didn't do anything.
We'll feel good about ourselves.
Neil will not admit.
We'll have Irene report. it.
Damn.
That you've got to be able to live. I mean, and if you banned everything, you feel no immunities, in your body, and you can't live in a glass bottle either.
No, and as I understand it, and it's from our toxicologist, not for me, there, out of these 16,000 chemicals, there's very few that we know are bad for you. There are some that we do, and those are they're being increasingly regulated, which is important. But the vast majority of them, we have no idea if they're bad for us, and maybe even know that they're not. But
The PFAS
is
so Grady said there's no, I think, I could be wrong, but I thought he said there's no good one out there. But maybe,
I don't think that's, I think.
but I'm probably, I don't wanna speak for him.
I think it's all in how you define it.
Yeah.
Because right now it's being defined as one fluorinated carbon atom, which is any kind of fluorine, and which is used in 16,000 chemical compounds. The research has shown that some of they call it long chain carbon atoms. So some things that are not just one fluorinated carbon atom, but 5 or 6 or 7. Some of those, like PFOA and PFOS, those are known to be carcinogenic, or I think carcinogenic, but at least definitely bad. We
And
know
I
that.
apologize, I don't think it was Mr. Grady, I think it was Dr. Bennett who was here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Pyruvate, yes.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot we don't know. But we only know that a handful of them out of the 16,000 are bad for. I'm not saying that the other ones aren't, I just don't think we know. And that's at least from our perspective, is focus on what we know. And try to regulate the things that we know are bad for us, but let's not try to regulate our entire economy, since we really don't make anything of a lot, but we do buy things. We probably need to continue to buy those. And in terms of the pesticides, there's, in the pesticide portion of the bill, there's 6 different chemicals that are spelled out. Those 6 are already non-pesticides. EPA has already addressed that, so it doesn't hurt us, but it's just duplicative.
So I don't wanna delay Michael's, because I know.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
He's now making like thousands of dollars a minute, by being here.
Right.
We can only have him for. I was gonna make the point. that-
Apparently something was said that I was.
We need.
No, we
Yeah,
need
for
you.
15 minutes.
We need to talk to both of you,
Yeah.
so you just can you slide your?
Sure.
And we're on the. PFAS.
Yes, good one.
observe
Yeah, you jack your chair up a little, it'd be at the same.
It's the hair that really is my.
There's a little, there's a little.
What we have is, we need to do a PFAB's recommendation to Health and Welfare on 197. And we've taken quite a lot of testimony. And there's a registration form for a bunch of them. We've heard there's some bad ones and there's some that aren't so bad. A lot of them we don't know about. But we've heard from the veterinarians association, well, we heard from farmers and the corn growers that there's hardly any in treated corn seeds. And that, but the vets are very concerned about some being in medicines that they use. And I don't know. We need to make sure that those are not on any list to ban or do away with. So there's dog collars involved for ticks and fleas and you know, that's made right into their collar, that so they don't bring in and get Lyme disease started in people. So we want to be practical about what we, I guess, send Jenny for Health and Welfare. But yeah, you know, if we got some bad ones, we want to make sure they're registered and controlled. And Steve knows quite a bit about that. And I think probably you know quite a bit about that.
So I think it would be very easy to add exemption to the ban on those neonicotinoids that are adulterated with fluorinated carbon, PFAS. I would just need a definition of what is going to be exempt, the universe. Because, for example, veterinary care products are already accepted from what is a restricted use pesticide in Vermont, but it doesn't define what a veterinary care product is. In addition, just a couple of years ago, you started registering dosage form health products. I don't know if that falls within the universe of what you want accepted or what the vets want accepted as well. So it's easy to draft. I just need to know what you wanted to apply to.
Well, I think where we are in the funding role, let me know. So I'm sure you're sure. We don't wanna put ourselves in an uneconomic way of surviving, but yeah, we wanna protect, we wanna protect the PFABs that are really, or exempt the ones that are really necessary, like for the medicines and like corn seed, we've been told that it's 1/10 of 100 million.
1 in 1,000 seeds. Corn seeds are planted.
1/10 of 1,000.
Yeah.
And
1/10 of 1,000 Finish.
1/1000th.
1/1000.
Yeah, there's 90,000 acres of corn planted in Vermont, and
Yeah.
90 million planted in the US.
Okay, oh, I see, thank you. Yeah.
So, it's a very small percentage and I don't know if. I don't want to get numbers mixed up into what we give them, but something that, that's not gonna be helpful. Why ban it? If we did ban it, then the alternative would be to use something that's worse, maybe broadcasting, bug and weed killers and things of that would be, the drift would be a lot worse for our honeybees than something that's down in the ground that bees don't ever get at. And they claim when corn gets 0.4 inches high or some low number, that, anything in that corn is pretty free of PFAS and bad stuff for animals. So
I raise an idea that, okay, we have a toxicologist on staff for the first time, Pam Brock, who you've heard from. She's just joined us in, I think it was December. She worked in Maine, and Maine has been one of the states most impacted by PFAS, because of the sludge that we're spreading. So she in Maine adopted a system which they're really struggling to implement, and Minnesota also has adopted a system. I wonder, and Pam, at least Pam's belief is that pesticides are already regulated so strictly by EPA that this PFAS addition is not useful, because they're already there's 6 substances that are enumerated in S-197. Those are already not in pesticides. And then there are some other ones that we don't know if they're harmful that are pesticides. So I wonder if it would make sense for us to write a report. I wonder if there's an appetite for looking into this further before we're passing legislation. So look at what's happening in Maine, look at what's happening in Minnesota. EPA has been dealing with fluorinated containers and stopped one company fluorinating their containers because there was some leaching. So maybe one idea is that we just kind of dig a little deeper before we start passing laws, because PFAS is so ubiquitous in so many things, and most of the time we don't know whether it's harmful or not. Maybe we should focus on learning a little bit more. And EPA does, as I understand it, the 6 that are known to be problematic are not in pesticides right now. So all the other ones, some may be bad for us, some may not be, but they're also in things like tick collars that there are no alternatives for, or in anesthesia, which there's no alternative for. So it's quite a bureaucracy to create a registration and to get people to get the information. Even we've asked about seeds too, we've asked about other things. People don't know. And so maybe we should know what we really want to ask for before we're just an action. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Shugrita, can you remind us what sections of the bill that we're looking at? This is for Senator Lyons' bill, right?
Yes.
And what are the question, I guess 6 and 7, but what are the real questions that this committee is being asked to decide? Because I'm just getting confused around seeds and PFAS and neonics, and so I'm just trying to bring us back to the questions that she's asking us.
So it's really section 7.
Okay,
And it provides that a person shall not sell, offer for sale, use, or distribute in the state of pesticide
okay,
that's been adulterated in an amount exceeding 20 parts per trillion by a Steve reference the 6 main PFAS substances. And then it goes on to say that pesticides that do not contain PFAS as an intentionally added ingredient, and that have been packaged within a fluorinated high-density polyethylene container shall be tested for PFAS prior to sale, offered for sale, or distribution. Pesticide containing PFAS due to chemicals leached from the container in an amount exceeding 20 parts per trillion is prohibited from sale. There's also a requirement that manufacturers submit a formula for their pesticide. And there is a requirement that basically what they have to provide as part of their registration. I want to note that treated Article Cs are not subject to this.
Right, okay.
Because treated Article Cs are not pesticides.
Great, thank you. Okay. That's where I was getting confused.
What's
And
the very first part of that request?
It says a person shall not sell, offer for sale, use, or distribute in the state of pesticide that has been adulterated in an amount exceeding 20 parts per trillion by one of the 6 or a combination of the 6 major PFAS substances. I also want to note that going back to my original question, what do you want to exempt under veterinary care? I don't know how anesthesia is a pesticide. Right?
Well, I think that maybe was bleeding over into the what people can consume. So the consumer pieces of this bill, like what you can put the state and municipalities can buy, but I don't know. We were talking about it yesterday in response to your question about because the veterinarians are worried about not being able to buy.
Okay, so that's in
Right.
the previous sections of the bill.
And I think there's an amendment about all consumers maybe, but I haven't been following that as closely. I don't.
See, the part that you read to us, sounds to me like they're after the small packaging for the most part of products
Well,
that consumers want.
as Steve referenced, EPA has already told the major manufacturer of pesticide containers, like almost all household pesticide containers, to stop fluorinating their packaging. And so that's already
So
been
that's
done.
done.
So I think they represent like 70% of the packaging for pesticides, so that's already been done.
So the other 30%,
Well, the other 30% may not have had fluorinated containers to begin with.
yeah,
And so to an extent, I see the rationale of Steve's request. The ground is shifting. It may have already shifted to the point where this is obsolete. So it's hard to say right now.
well, if it shifted to obsolete, we don't really care if she passes it or not. I mean, let her pass it if
Well, I mean,
it's obsolete already.
it would require manufacturers and distributors to submit confidential statements of formulas. It require the agency to change their registration form. It require the agency to maintain confidential records of the formula. I mean, it does have,
Create more
Right.
employees. Yeah, we could use a few.
I could use a replacement.
So at one point, I was fully in favor of trying to exempt the vet products, however we define that. But realizing, and I think I made the point on Tuesday, that once we do, the door isn't shut. There'll be others following in that line that also will request exemption. So here's where I am now. Rather than try to come up with a whole list of things, and guess what? We're gonna leave somebody out, because we always, as we're seeing with other acts that we passed, there's some unintended consequences, which we dealt with yesterday. I'd like to just say, take that first part, and since Steve has already said, the EPA has already said, you can't sell it anyway, and put a period at the end of that sentence and leave the rest of that out. That's where I am, because your suggestion resonates very well with me. There's other things moving on a federal level that I think we need to pay attention to, and not necessarily always be the first to do something. Well, in this case, maybe the
I
third.
guess I don't understand.
Okay, that you can't sell any product that has those 6 enumerated PFAS substances in them, and just let it go with that.
Well, I do think they are in flea collars. I think
Those 6.
one of them is.
Oh.
So then we exempt
So we have 5 of them.
for veterinarian, yeah.
Yeah. See, there's no exemption in there, right, Michael, for the medicine?
Yeah, the active ingredient in flea collar is imidacloprid.
Guessing. Yeah, maybe Dr. Breyer wasn't thinking of collars and other things when she was talking about the pesticides themselves. I don't know. But yeah, they are in.
And that's from 2023, and it's from, based on an EPA order. With the warning labels on those collars. To identify metacloprid and methylene.
So is there some way you can write us up an exemption for those, for medical purposes?
Sure, I mean, the other one you wanna think of is, bed bugs and lice.
Why not?
Well, I mean, these motel owners are certainly using a lot of that product.
Ear tags,
See, to me, this whole conversation sort of suggests that maybe a little more digging is needed before.
We jump on the wagon.
So and maybe a more targeted, like these, instead of talking about the exemptions, which Senator Collmore is talking about, which are very difficult to do, maybe instead of writing exemptions, the ban should be tailored to be workable, without depriving us of things that we have to use.
I agree. I guess I was saying it, but in a 180-degree different way.
Well, and I don't, I mean, obviously from our toxicologist, I didn't think any of those 6 substances were in current pesticides, but I think there's more, there's 16,000 different chemical compounds of this.
So apparently bed bugs have developed a resistance to the neonics, so they're not being used.
Wow. Termites, that's a good one too.
Well, lice is the other one. And now they're using organophosphates for lice, so it really is the dog collars.
The ticks, yeah.
I can't believe they're using organophosphates for flat,
Because
because our organophosphates.
still brutal.
Neonics took their place.
Yes.
Oh. So they're even worse.
It's used a lot more of them and they're, yeah.
I do have to go to my next Senate committee.
No, we didn't get to the 2 bills you were scheduled to do, but
You want to
We
pull
touch.
that?
Yeah, I mean, we can write a report, and I could also just write a streamlined prohibition on pesticides that contain one of those 6. And then have an exemption for veterinary care products.
I think that would cover our request, get the Jenny,
Okay, so she could then choose which one she wants.
well, maybe I've got to have a visit with her.
Okay,
Once I see we gotta see, you're coming back tomorrow.
I'm in here tomorrow, yes.
Oh, good.
I don't know what time,
And very
10:30.
Well, I don't know what your time schedule is, but if you had something that we could look at.
Sure.
You know,
Will do.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
And Steve.
Thanks.
Sorry, my words.
They talked about this earlier today on 301.
Well, we,
Okay.
So, anything else, Steve?
I don't think so, unless any of you have questions. Appreciate the time to discuss that.
Everything else is rolling along. Okay.
Well enough.
Well, we may, if we could see a schedule of those older farms.
Oh, yeah,
And come up
so that
with,
animal at large.
if that's something you could get rounded up or have somebody round up for us.
I mean, so right now, our basic fine structure is that you can be charged up to $5,000 per violation. So any specific violation, most of our statutes, or 50,000 overall. So if you had, 15 different violations, you could stack them to a cap of 50. So it's pretty simple. It's just 5 per violation. That overall, there's some things like regulate for where we're say regulating, registering feed or seed. There's more specific, like smaller fines, $25 for the first offense, 50 for the second. But mostly we now have this overall 5 and 50, but we never go in with the highest fine unless it's really egregious behavior.
So where did the $10 come?
From the running at large, I don't know when those statutes were last updated. I'm
Oh.
guessing it's from the 30s, 40s, 50s. I don't know.
I think we might have heard it's like the other 50s.
Yeah.
So we could put that fine down. $1,000 per animal.
Just a little while ago, our max was 1,025 and it was raised for most of our water quality's been 5 and 50 for a while.
Those things we do periodically.
Right,
Check them, but
right,
the old ones, animals running at large and
right.
a lot of dogs are.
Yeah.
Way behind. So, those that are 20 years old and 30 years old, they should be updated.
Yeah.
But the one where the animals running at large, I want to see if those are stackable fines and if they're limited to all the animals being considered as one fine, or if it's each animal.
Oh, I see.
And I don't know if that would do any good up there.
I don't know either.
You got Rutland, you guys had a bad case.
Yeah, we
down
did.
there on Mendon a
Mendon.
few years back.
Yep.
Somebody was killed, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Is that a horse? Is that,
it was a bull.
but you hit a horse with a car, they're gonna come inside with you,
yeah.
especially if they're crossways. They flop on the hood or through the windshield and it's all over for you usually. And yeah, I had that experience once.
You hit a horse or a deer?
It was,
Oops.
no, it was horse.
Oh, really? Really?
Wow. There's 4 or 5 of them in the road.
Oh, jeez.
And they were all over the place. And it was coming around the corner and there they were. And I knew, that you hit one of them suckers, they're coming in.
So what?
You should have been in riding with me. No, I put the car in, turned it sideways and slewed it sideways. Went up the road sideways and of course I put dents from the front fender all the way through to the back fender and but never heard a horse and I drove home. But the whole side of the car was where the ass end of the horses
Yeah.
hit the car and the door. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. So we know that sometimes this happens just by accident. People are incredibly vigilant. They've got great fences, but it happens. But when when it's negligence, do people have a little bit more of a case, you know?
Sure. And the worse, the more you can prove knowledge, so part of any sort of analysis of whether you're acting reasonably is your
Right.
history of behavior, so.
So you would think this situation, not to bring it back to this nightmare up in Enosburg, but you'd think this person would have some kind of, if everything they're saying is.
Agreed.
Is
If whomever owns the animals doesn't take any action to
Right.
contain them, they keep causing damage, yes, you should be able to win in
Or
court.
even if you don't have a great fence, and you're not
Right.
willing to fix it,
Right.
yeah.
Collecting the money might be a different thing.
Sure,
But
sure.
getting a judgment shouldn't be that hard, if you've got a demonstrated pattern of.
But yesterday down in the health,
Yeah.
we had the court system and state's attorney. 28,000 was it, Richie? Cases on the docket.
Statewide?
Yeah,
I believe that.
that's crazy.
Well, you got a cow running.
I know, which one are you gonna do? I know.
Yeah.
I remember they came in and said that here too, in terms of
And-
priorities.
In the first offense, should be fairly light.
Right.
But second should be,
Repeat.
third should be, and
I know.
fourth, you should be out of. No more animals on that problem.
Yeah, but this is a little different because it's not criminal, so it would either be the landowner themselves bringing a civil action, or the town could bring a civil action to enforce, but the state's attorneys would be dealing with this unless you made it a crime. But I think these are all civil issues.
Well, I think in that one case, without, wasn't personal crime, but they did $5,000 damage to the septic tank in
Yeah,
lawn. I mean, that's a pretty hefty.
sure, yeah,
damage.
yeah.
Well, I don't know what. Nobody's come up with any solution to it, you know, the remedy that. But the guy, to Sarah, he's not a farmer.
Right.
It's a landowner that just likes to have a few animals around, but hates building a fence to keep them contained. You still got that picture, Irene?
Somewhere.
Of the property?
Huh?
What's the picture of the property?
No, picture of the property.
Right.
I mean,
Without a
it's not anything you would send your mom and be proud of me, mom, it's not, this is no good place.
Is it your district or is it Senator Brock and Morris's district?
It's there.
It's out, oh, it's Enosburg, right? It's Enosburg.
But,
How big of a problem, I'm just wondering if the town could build a fence to charge you for it, not saying that would work, but if it's not a huge.
sure, the town could go in. But the story we heard was there's some conflicting people, you know, select board or fence viewers or
Yeah.
that, see, this guy doesn't own all those animals. He owns part of them and some of them are, somebody else's are pastured there
Okay.
and,
I mean, the town doesn't have any authority to go build a fence, but if they gave permission, they could, and maybe, I mean, at some point, someone's gotta do something, and maybe it's seizing the animals is the other option, but that's not easy to do.
No, then they're stuck with them.
Well, cost and also the legal
well,
authority
Richie,
to
how
do
much,
that.
that fence so wouldn't be that long. But what he does is besides a bad fence, he'll go and back in and dump a round bale off, drive out, too shiftless to shut the gate, leave the gate open. So.
We've had problems with particularly hunters coming,
Open the gate.
open the gate and then go right up through.
You don't close the gate. And there it's not, yeah. Can't blame that farmer.
We've also had, in the fall, we always had trouble, if you put a bull out to breed some heifers. people walk right up through the middle. No matter what you tell them, you know, you can.
Wait, this is hunting season or this is just people just want to walk on your?
Generally in the fall, you know,
Yeah.
some of it's around hunting.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's bird, turkey, whatever it is, they march right up through and it's like, you know, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know, so I think when the person get killed in Rutland County, if it's a bull that's out, I think they should be liable. But if you're walking through my pastures and you haven't got permission and and something happens, I'm not so sympathetic towards you.
They're trespassing anyways, it's automatic trespassing in Vermont.
Proving.
So,
Hard part.
Yep, the hard part is you tell that to the court.
so tomorrow, we're gonna take that bill that we have, in regards to, 272.
Yep.
And we're gonna add that either onto your bill or the House bill on the, road of poisons and the on the
Yeah.
other sides and the.
Yeah.
And, so we won't have to do that as a bill, it'll just be for you guys to do rulemaking in regards to those subjects.
Did Steve Glenn,
I've talked to him about it and do
he
you want
felt comfortable being able to do it.
I mean, we can definitely make all those, I think there's 12 products, if I remember correctly, that are at the second generation anticoagulant.
Yeah, it's so complicated, we couldn't follow it.
But I think you could make those all class A, so
Class.
they're restricted use, but I don't think you need to do rulemaking to do that. You can just do it and it'd be done.
Like a one line in our,
And that way, I mean, rulemaking is great when you need to fill in the holes from the legislation,
Okay.
but it's,
So what would we do? Just,
I think you could just, if you wanted to, you could just make all of those pesticides class A. And that way, they're automatically can only
So
be
we
used by,
give you permission to do that?
I think you could just change the law instead of giving us rulemaking authority. You can just say these 12, all of the second generation anticoagulants are restricted use class A pesticides. And then I think that would be all you have to do, and then they can only be sold to people who are licensed athletes.
Yeah, small, like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But we could direct you to do that inside the other bill.
Yeah, you can just change just change this, I haven't looked at the statute in a while, but just change what it is, making it clear that those are class A. And then there's no rulemaking needed because they're class A and they're subject to all those requirements.
Yeah,
We're still a bill.
And rulemaking is great when you need a lot of detail, but it's also cumbersome and it's time consuming. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would work.
I think that would work for us if it works for all of you, yeah.
would you draft that for us or do we go to Michael?
I'll talk to, I think Steve Dwayne is coming in tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we can,
See, Michael will be with us tomorrow, so hopefully
yeah,
we can get that squared away and,
Yeah.
and ready to go.
Yep.
Um,
but you're thinking about tacking it onto the committee's bill, the
Yeah.
S301.
So one line.
Yeah, then we don't have to do the bill, but it
Yeah.
still gets done
Yeah,
and dealt with.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else,
No,
Thank
yeah,
Thank you all very much.
yeah, yeah,
Good to see you.
There's a photo.
I'll show that, yes.
These cows are, there's fence here and there's over here, but it's maybe a gate or, we're just kind of wandering now.
This is the road right here?
Yeah.
That's okay. How many pounds is it? Yeah.
weren't that many.
Sounded somewhere between maybe 10 and 15.
It's just pretty small. I mean, it wouldn't be that, hard to build a fence, but still.
It just closed the gate.
to get down beyond his property, don't look like it'd be that far.